Ms. Thunberg, let me ask you a question. If you're sailing across the ocean and you're picking up trash along the way, and for every one piece of trash that you pick up, there's a boat right next to you dumping out 5 pieces, how would that make you feel?
If you use that logic, then I am also dumping a lot of trash in the ocean. And then I would stop dumping my trash in the ocean and tell the other boat to stop dumping their trash in the ocean as well.
And that's the important point here. I think that what we need to be doing is we need to be focusing on the countries that are dumping trash in the ocean. Of course, that's a metaphor. The fact that China is, here we are talking about reducing emissions, yet China, under the Paris Accords, are going to be increasing their emissions by nearly 50%, 5 gigatons annually. So while in the United States we need to continue investing in innovative solutions and exporting clean energy technologies, it makes no sense for us to be doing it if we're simply watching for increases in China.
I have a question. When your children ask you, did you do absolutely everything in your power to stop the climate crisis, when the storms are getting worse and we're seeing all of the effects of the climate crisis, when they ask you, did you do everything? Can you really look them in the eye and say, no, sorry, I couldn't do anything because that country over there didn't do anything, so if they're not going to do it, then I'm not? That is shameful, and that is cowardly. And so I just don't understand, as a parent, how can you look your kid in the eye and say, there's this impending crisis, everything is at stake, but I stood back and I didn't really do anything, I didn't take action, I didn't act like it was an emergency because our neighbors over there weren't doing it, so I'm just not going to. How can you tell your children that?
I think I don't need to add anything, but just another perspective. I am from Sweden. It's a small country, and there it is the same argument. Why should we do anything? Just look at the US, they say. So just so you know, that is being used against you as well.
Focused on the carbon cycle and climate modeling. I have a slide up here. Are you familiar with this graph from 1982?
Welcome back to Conservative News. Today, we break down a congressional moment that left climate activist Greta Thunberg speechless. A brave congressman confronted Thunberg with hard facts, exposing the hypocrisy of climate alarmists who ignore China's massive emissions while demanding extreme sacrifices from Americans. Thunberg resorted to emotional rhetoric, shaming parents for not doing everything to stop the so-called climate crisis. But erase the reality. Economic destruction isn't a solution then. They tried to use a 1982 Exxon climate model to prove their point. But let's be real, science is about real-world results, and these models have been notoriously unreliable.
Can you briefly explain what it shows?
Sure. What it shows is a projection into the future of carbon dioxide levels and climate change associated with those carbon dioxide levels. And it's a very accurate representation of what today's climate change actually is.
So this was a model from 1982 with startlingly accurate projections into the present
That's
day.
correct.
The orange line shows the actual level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere through this year. And the blue line shows the actual average temperature change. So in 1982, Exxon accurately, 1982, 7 years before I was even born, Exxon accurately predicted that by this year, 2019, the Earth would hit a carbon dioxide concentration of 415 parts per million and a temperature increase of 1 degree Celsius. Dr. Hoffert, is that correct?
We were excellent scientists.
Yes, you were. Yes, you were. So they knew.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I offered 2 amendments to this appropriations package that would save a total of $86 million in taxpayer dollars. One amendment strikes funding to buy electric vehicles for the federal fleet, and the other removes woke federal funding to make public housing climate resilient, whatever the heck that is. The American people cannot afford Biden's climate agenda. They also don't want it, as I am confident they will demonstrate 112 days from today. Americans are suffering from 9% inflation, the highest in 40 years. Call it the Biden price hike, if you will, with an average national gas price of nearly $5 per gallon. And yet this Democrat majority wants to make the American people pay for unelected bureaucrats to drive around in expensive electric vehicles and make them fund climate welfare programs. Washington is pumping $91 billion in funding towards a ridiculous transportation and housing bill. This is an increase of 12% year over year. Voting for an absurd spending increase is simply a vote for more inflation and economic pain for all Americans. So I urge my colleagues to support my amendments, vote to eliminate wasteful spending, and oppose the underlying bill, and I yield back.
Meanwhile, common-sense lawmakers are fighting back against Biden's reckless spending, rejecting wasteful electric vehicle purchases and taxpayer-funded climate welfare projects. If you agree, hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know in the comments should the U.S. keep funding this climate agenda. See you next time on Conservative News.